Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find a way to watch this podcast. This is me, Omar Rashawn Borja, the Burger Popper, joined by an old friend of the podcast, a longtime friend of the podcast. We have Bobby of the TNT College Football Podcast, probably the hardest working and busiest man of the college football offseason with his 134. I mean, the FBS needs to stop growing and making this man's life hard. Like that's what I thought of. Like, I guess in the span since like you started doing the preview since I think 2021. We've gained Sam Houston, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State. So I mean, I guess it's three schools. Oh, James Madison. So four schools making your job that much harder. But I'm joined by Bobby of the TNT College Football Podcast. As always, it's an honor to have him on. Bobby, how's everything going aside from the previews?
Everything's great, Omar. Thank you. And then I get Missouri State next year too. So,
Oh, yep.
and then throwing in all that with a newborn baby and my other two children, staying busy, that's for sure. But it's great. God's blessed me so much, and I can't thank him enough.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's like what the Bible says, children are a blessing from God. Maybe not when you're trying to do 134 team previews, but I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Not trying to blaspheme on the podcast. But that being said, we're here to discuss some old Big East rivalries. Particularly one that I had written about earlier in the week, one that I have, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I guess I milked it, covered the story from multiple angles, the end of the Victory Bell series, which I mean, I guess is kind of blown over. The outrage has already been past, like the initial wave, and such is, I guess, the current trends in college football. We get upset when something changes, and then we just get used to it. Like I guess we got used to this one pretty quick because the outrage hasn't really lasted. But Cincinnati, for those of you that don't know, Cincinnati and Miami, they will end their storied rivalry after 2026. They won't even play in 2025 after Miami's decided to cancel their visits to Nippert Stadium. Then in return, Cincinnati canceled their visits to Yager Stadium, which it's good that I mean this isn't our main topic, but it's good that a group of five team is putting their foot down and making their rivals play at them. That being said, Cincinnati now is opening in 2025 on their schedule. They already have one FCS school scheduled, which I wrote about. UConn has two openings for 2025. One of them coming after Ohio State canceled their game against UConn, which I know you and Pete Kalen covered on the UConn podcast. But first, I just want to ask your thoughts on really, I guess, the victory bell, if you want to talk about that or chime in on that, pun intended. Or and then of course UConn scheduling Cincinnati potentially filling that hole.
Well, I'll say that I understand why Cincinnati might want to get rid of that game because of them losing last year to Miami. There's a really, really good football team in Oxford, Ohio there who has a shot this year to do some really, really good things. They return a lot. Um, but just from the perspective of just the rivalry going away, I mean, it's like you said, it's unfortunate, but it's the landscape of college football that we live in, unfortunately. It stinks. It just stinks. And it just makes you wonder how many of these other games are going to go by the wayside. The one that comes to mind is like Colorado State. Just trying to think of G5 versus Power Five. Just hopefully games like that continue. I know there's not many of them, but it's fantastic for the sport and those fan bases. Think about how great that win was for Miami, Ohio last year to beat Cincinnati. They very well could do it again this year. They're at home. They got a great chance to do it again. Then to shift the focus to UConn, Cincinnati potentially. This was, like you said, Big East American Conference games in the past. I believe from they played every year. I want to say from 2005 to 2019. I want to say um, Cincinnati has a definitive advantage in the series. We've never won at Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati, Ohio. We're 3-13, I want to say, in the series. Uh, but at the same time, there were stretches where, especially in the 2010s, that whole after Randy Etzel left the first time, honestly, where where we struggled as a program. We had six different presidents, four different athletic directors. Pete Callen and I have talked about that at length on our show about just how difficult it was for UConn to gain any traction. It would be difficult for any institution to have any traction when you have leadership changes that frequently, especially in a short time frame. It was like in an 8 to 10 year time frame where you have six different presidents, four different athletic directors. Even the basketball program at UConn suffered during that time. But I think the Cincinnati UConn potential of playing again is something that I think both sides would be in favor of. Just for one, the history of it, and two, I think both programs. Yes, Cincinnati's in the Big 12. UConn is growing as a program. Yes, they have to go out there and win games, and I think they're going to do that this year. But I think it would be a very competitive game, and I think that it would be a good opportunity for both programs to put a decent product out on the field. Something that Pete and I always talk about is UConn just has to one, they have to just win. I mean, you got to win games, get the bowl eligibility consistently. But to take that next step, we have to win some marquee games on the road. Winning at Cincinnati would be a good step for us. I'm not saying from a national perspective that that's going to be this marquee win that we like a feather in our cap. That would be us, like in the past, going to NC State and winning, or or I mean, like last year we went to Tennessee, something on the order of that, beating a upper echelon program. That's something that we need to do. And this year we have multiple ACC teams on our schedule with the likes of Syracuse, Duke, Wake Forest. We play Maryland as well. If we're able to win one, two, three of those games, that's huge for us. And I think that we'll be able to win one or two of those games. I firmly believe we will be able to do that, and that's going to be a great opportunity for us to continue to grow the program and just moving forward. But again, linking it back to the Cincinnati UConn discussion, I'm in favor of it. One, again, selfishly, it's closer for me living in Illinois. Cincinnati, Ohio is much closer, but at the same time, I like the matchup opportunity between the two. I think it's good for both parties.
Yeah, I agree as well. With the shared history, of course, and like kind of the motivation, or I guess the boost we get the fan base. Like you mentioned, the series history, 3-13 all time versus Cincinnati, which like I had no idea the series was that lopsided, honestly, because both teams kind of came up in the Big East at that same time. Like when you think about the post Miami, post Virginia Tech Big East, you think of UConn, Cincinnati, that core and everything. So I had no idea before doing my research that it was that lopsided. Something I want to ask too is like for me, I guess from my perspective as a fan of a program that was recently an independent with these Power Five games. Like for me, I have to say I think this year's schedule was the first time that I've been. I mean, I shouldn't say super excited because 2018 Oklahoma was cool. 29 or 2017, going back 2017, Ohio State was cool. 2018, Oklahoma was cool. 2019, Michigan. Those were cool games, right? But the ones I was excited the most about, Power Five wise, was when we played Syracuse this year for the first time since '96, second time since '87, I think, or second time since '89. When we played Boston College for the first time since 2013, those regional schools that are natural rivals. I mean, in comparison, the LSU game, that was just another Power Five game against like a name brand program, seemed kind of random on the schedule that we didn't really share much with. So I mean, like, it's great. I think it's great that UConn is playing Power Five schools, but I kind of feel like I wonder if the fan base feels that these games like kind of random, or I guess they're like less inclined to go to see UConn play North Carolina or UConn play Duke at the Rent compared to seeing Syracuse at the Rent. So I want to get your feel on that, like having a power conference team with a good degree of familiarity. Will that make much of a difference as having the ACC schools on the schedule?
I think the Northeast aspect, like you're talking about, like us playing Syracuse, Boston College, like we've done the past couple of years, I think that's important. I know the fan base really loved that. I think people are intrigued with the Duke matchup uh, a lot because of the basketball history between the two, with the well, not between the two programs, but with the two programs. I think that there's just there's a lot of parallels, I guess you could say. I mean, yes, both institutions are different in the way that they do things, and both programs are different in how they do things. But I know there's not much love between the fan bases. Let's just say that. So I think that game in particular is cool just because of the banter that comes out between the two fan bases. We play Wake Forest this year. That's an interesting one. Not a obviously not a ton of history in that matchup, but it's a program that is comparable to UConn in a way. Yes, they have sustained success over a big chunk of time, but they're also a program that a smaller Power Five program from an institutional standpoint. That I think that UConn fans can kind of get behind that. I think UConn fans don't mind the ACC matchups. I think some of the matchups that we've had in the past, with let's say the likes of Tennessee, Michigan, the Ohio State game. I mean, I think the only thing that fans really look forward to in that matchup was one, the paycheck we were getting, and two, the handful of fans that would travel to those games. It's the opportunity to go to a major stadium. But I mean, those games in particular. I mean, you understand when you go to Michigan or you go to Tennessee, we know what's going to happen. We just want to compete, show that we're not the laughing stock that most of the country thinks we are as a football program, um, and we're building that. It's going to take some time, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that point you made about showing that we can, you can compete was like big. Especially like, just seeing from my perspective as an Army fan, like the Yukon or not the Yukon, the Oklahoma Michigan games, those are great. And of course we almost won those, but we just want to show the country that we could compete, not much shared history. I'd say like from what I guess from the stories that I've heard about Army in I guess in the Carrier Dome, which I've heard stories apparently from a former cadet that or a former graduate that apparently like cadets in the 96 game were getting thrown change at them. They were getting maybe some beer thrown at them apparently by Syracuse
Oh
fans. I don't
wow.
want to sully the name of Syracuse fans. I don't have anything against them, but it's like hearing stories like that, the traditions in the same region of like Syracuse and Army with like, Syracuse being running back you playing against triple option you essentially, like definitely a great storyline and everything. And that felt special compared to like of course LSU like playing at Death Valley like that's cool and everything, but maybe this is just I know you've been to Death Valley, you love the venue, and I feel like we talked about this in an episode before about Death Valley, but like for me it's like the history in me. I need to see a stadium that's been unchanged since the 1920s, for me to fit for it to feel special to me, and it's like Death Valley, it's like it's it's a shell. I wouldn't say a shell of its former self, but it's like you could hardly see like the original Death Valley.
Right.
That's neither here nor there, but I definitely get the point. I really admire UConn's scheduling ambitions. I really do. Um, I think it's great that they're playing, I think, four power conference teams a year because the last time that Army did that, I think last time they played four, I want to say was 2015 when we had Rutgers, Wake, Duke, and Penn State on the schedule. So 2015 through this past year was the highest we've had since that 2015 season. So I think it's great that they do that, and I think it kind of I'd say like kind of preserves their Power Five status in the Big East, or I should say Power Six status in the Big East when the Big East is still around. So I think it's great, but I think the program could benefit from familiarity, which we talked about briefly before. Rutgers is a team needing a game. I think that's a game that would be great for both fan bases for very obvious reasons, especially with Rutgers playing the Big Ten. That's now of course in California. So yeah.
I know our fans are all for that. I know we our fans are jumping on that one if that's the case. I've heard that the Rutgers side of things are the ones that might not want to play the game. I don't know that for a fact. I'm not going to sit there and say that's for sure. That's just what I've heard. But like you said, I mean, they're going to have to make travel to games all the way across the country at least once a year, maybe twice. Whether it's to Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, whoever it may be. Maybe they got to go to Nebraska. Maybe they got to go to Minnesota, Iowa, wherever. I mean, it's a long trek for them no matter what. So I think it would make sense for them to play as many East time zone games as possible, especially one like UConn that's not far away at all. It just makes sense to me logistically. Obviously, both programs have a history with each other. I don't think we need to rehash that, but on our end. I know we'd be excited about that, and I know our fan base would be really really excited about
Yeah, I agree, honestly. And I'm trying to think I know Rutgers has scheduled old Big East rivals. They had Temple and Boston College on the schedule the past couple of years. So I do think the hunger's there. It's interesting that I guess the Rutgers side of things is not interested, which surprises me. I'm not trying to sully the name of any Rutgers fans. Matty Waters, a friend of the podcast, a fellow New Jersey Generals fan, good friend and everything. Don't want to ruffle any feathers there with the Rutgers community. So I'm just hoping it's not true, and I hope that it works out. I hope that this is the perfect storm, even though I do think Rutgers is more inclined to, I guess, pick from one of the group of fives that's still on this list of programs needing a game for 2025. Which, speaking of this list, I guess the last thing I wanted to go over is an intriguing opponent for me on this list is Louisiana Monroe, where UConn needs two FBS games. And I think it will be interesting, honestly. I think ULM could spin a home and home out of this one. And that's great for the Warhawks because not many teams go down to Monroe, Louisiana. Northeast Louisiana isn't exactly a huge metropolis. Not exactly a tourist paradise. I don't mean to insult the land, but I haven't heard much of a travel boom to that region. But I think it's interesting in the fact that I guess for UConn, do you think that ULM would, I wouldn't say roll out the red carpet, but essentially treat UConn like a big game given UConn's history in the Big East? Because I know that they pulled out a lot of stops for Army when Army came into town last year for the season opener that every Army fan hates talking about. But it was cool to see Army get, I guess, special treatment from the community. I guess get special emphasis from a school that typically doesn't really host like big programs aside from a couple one-off Power Five games that they hosted in the early 2010s. So I guess, do you think UConn has the power to really be a draw in at ULM or not?
Pete and I kind of talked about that last night in the show. We were kind of going through the list of those games and just kind of like what do we think realistically? When we got to ULM, I guess the thing that we thought of the most was the logistical standpoint of from the UConn's perspective. Um, how easy would it be to get there? But from a ULM perspective, like you were saying, I think it'd be huge for them. I mean, UConn is a brand name. Um, yes, football people say what they want, but UConn is a brand. They absolutely are. I mean, when you see that UConn across the chest or Connecticut, people know who it is. They know who that Husky is, and it's a big deal. And I think if ULM was able to draw that, that would be absolutely huge for them. Then from our standpoint, like you said, we need two games. They have to be FBS games. We don't want to get stuck with having to play two FCS games. Then we have to win 7 games to go to a bowl. Um, I don't think that we've reached that point yet as a program where we could do something like that and be very very confident that we're going to hit that point. I firmly believe that we can. But I know it's a process. Uh, but I'd be all for it. I mean, Pete and I, the one thing we said is, hey, let's play, let's play anybody, anytime, any place. Let's have that mindset. And if that means going to Monroe, I'm all for it. I love seeing games like that, just kind of off the wall type games in that situation. I know some of the fans might be like, "Where are we going? Who are we playing? Who is that?" Um, but at the same time, maybe they could wear those really really cool helmets that they just came out.
Yeah, I agree. I'm still waiting. I really think that Air Force should play Louisiana Monroe for
Yes,
like the whole
yes,
bomber connection. Like that would be great,
yes.
honestly. Like, I mean, I think Air Force would probably push that to a neutral site to put to them playing that one at a independent stadium, which everyone knows I'm all for. Like you may hate me for like,
Mhm.
Air Force not I guess like not you in particular, but I guess like the audience may hate me for, pushing an iconic brand like Air Force out of Malone Stadium on campus to Shreveport, but sue me. It's a special event. Like I live for seeing the academies be given top billing and like saying, hey, you know what? This is the Air Force Academy. Let's play them at the Texans Stadium, which I was there for Sam Houston Air Force, which man, what a great performance by Sam Houston. The offense, though, was not there. I think they had like 86 yards total offense, but man, did that defense sure showed up that night. I mean, I think like Emmanuel Michelle, I mean, everyone's favorite fullback from last year. I shouldn't say everyone's because I as an Army fan, but like he was pretty shut down, I think, against Sam Houston. But that being said, like you mentioned the helmets, but like would love to see Air Force there. But yeah, it's just great to see UConn. I mean, I think I at times I kind of stand like on it's kind of hard for me 50-50 in terms of like playing a national schedule because I guess being a Northeastern school is hard to have like Northeastern rivals in this day and age. And like the general randomness of the schedule, it's not really fun either because it's like, okay, so we're playing, even though Coastal Carolina is a great program, like what does that really have to do with us, that's just one example. Coastal Carolina being kind of random. I know for you guys, I'm sure Rice seems pretty random. FIU as well in the future seems pretty random too. But just playing these programs and I guess establishing yourself more in these areas and these regions, I don't think it can hurt honestly if you can foot the bill.
I agree. I mean, we're recruiting at a national level now with the staff that we've put together. Obviously Louisiana is full of talent. And if we're able to get a footprint in there, that'd be great. We've been doing really, really well in the state of Georgia recruiting 2025 class. We have like 3 or 4 kids from the state of Georgia already. I know we're laying some really good groundwork in the state of South Carolina. Florida, have commitments from. So yeah, getting that footprint down south into that area. Like I said, Louisiana is full of talent. Be great for us.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. But I think we've covered everything in terms of topics. Is there anything final you'd like to add, Bobby, before we sign off and close out?
Well, as always, Omar, I want to thank you for having me. I appreciate the friendship that we've built through podcasting, through social media. There are good things on social media, folks. There's good things that can come from this. 2 of my best friends now are from social media. You and I have a great relationship due to social media. So, I mean, there are great things that can come from this. Again, I greatly appreciate it. Then I guess a selfish plug for myself as I continue to break down each and every program. I'm behind schedule, but I'm going to be doing my best to get those out as much as possible. I have a weekly show, of course, like we've talked about, talking about UConn football with former UConn defensive back Pete Callen. We dive deep into UConn football each week. We're going to be doing some every week football Fridays with Mark Zanetto from Locked On Sports UConn. That'll be great to just get out in front of a lot of UConn basketball fans, just to kind of, hey, let them know some of the stuff about football too. Our fan base is excited. They're excited. We started camp today. Coach Morris said a lot of great things. Most importantly, though, the guys are excited. They're focused, and as Pete and I like to say, when it comes to UConn football, our current players need to not worry about the past, control what they can control, and it's their opportunity now. They don't need to worry about the quote unquote burdens of the past. They have an opportunity to go write history this season, and talking with those guys and the coaches, I know they're really, really excited for that opportunity.
Yeah, that's a great point about forgetting about the past, control what you can control. Because of course, Army under Coach Jeff Monken has went through a tremendous turnaround from since when I was a kid. Since honestly, I'd say like the program kind of went downhill 2000. So like of course all that passes there, losing to Navy 14 times in a row is there, but I mean it's almost become like the new norm for Army to, beat Navy and everything, like 1/6 of the past eight and everything. So that's a definite example of that. And it's great to see that being like pushed in the culture about where it's like honestly at this point, like I think the dark age of UConn being a laughing stock and like being like pretty much like probably like the worst program in FBS, like that's a very distant memory. Like that's like something I don't even think of when I think of UConn, honestly. Like I just think of a program that's independent and it's just trying to make their way, kind of like I'd say kind of like New Mexico State was, honestly, like that level. Like I don't think about 2019 or 2021 like really when I think of UConn now, which I think Coach Mora, I know he's only been, I guess this is his third season. Like he's done a great job of really changing the culture and like really changing people's narrative on UConn, I'll say, as I guess as an outsider looking in on the program.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. That's what I try to do in the national circles that I'm a part of. Is I just try to paint the picture so people can see UConn in a positive light. The fact that we are not what we were in those 2019 when I first started covering them in 2021. I mean, I'll be honest, it was difficult. It was difficult to cover them each and every week. I watched every single minute of every single game of that 2021 season, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't difficult to try and say positive but insightful things in a good media sense. Um, but I'm so happy where we are now. That's for sure, and we're going to continue to grow. That's what it is. Got to be just building blocks and stepping stones, day by day.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm excited to see it. You know, Army won't be on the schedule until like I think the late 2020s, early 2030s. But I already have a Thanksgiving weekend trip marked for I think 2032 for Hartford. You know, bring the young Borja family up to Hartford, up to Storrs, Connecticut or Hartford, Connecticut for Army UConn, and I can imagine Army being in the Big East in a parallel universe that this is a conference game. Uh
Lord willing, I will join you
Yeah,
with
hopefully.
my clan too.
Yeah, hopefully, we will be able to join each other for that one. But thanks again, Bobby. Really appreciate the insight and everything. I always learn so much whenever you're on the podcast and listen to your podcast too, and everything. But until next time, everyone, thank you for joining whatever time you find your way to listen to this. Until next time, everyone, peace, love, and soul, the Burger Popper.